In one of the better corners of the internet, there exists the phenomenon of video games that don't actually exist. Entire catalogs of concepts and dream games realized not through code, but through art. From fake game magazine articles to entire fake game guidebooks, artists have been building these entire worlds that almost leave you convinced these could be real games, when they're not. If you've heard at all about this genre, you're probably familiar with the works of Plastiboo, who's brought us the likes of Vermis and Godhusk with their Souls-like worlds of misery and mystery. But we'll be talking about a different fake game today. One that certainly cooked, and in more ways than one, to say the least. We're going to be talking about Final Fentanyl, the survival horror shooter and acid trip nightmare game that doesn't exist. We start the game with a piece of art that looks like a needle. Before long, it disappears, and we get a load screen that clears up any doubt about what we saw. These are definitely syringes here. But wait, look how strange they are. Almost like there's some fleshy biotech. We don't have long before we get another screen change, where we see a quote from Philip K. Dick's A Scanner Darkly, a dystopian novel about drug abuse and drug culture. It's a small thing, but it further hammers in the fact that the title wasn't just some goofy play on Final Fantasy. This is gonna be a game about drugs. Let's read the quote real quick. It requires the greatest kind of wisdom, she thought, to know when to apply injustice. How can justice fall victim, even, to what is right? How can this happen? She thought, because there is a curse on this world, and all this proves it. This is the proof right here. Just a side note, whenever I read from the text, I'll use an echo from here on out to help you know what's from the game versus my own commentary. A cutscene begins to play. After dropping the lighter, you found yourself looking at the reflection of a lost soul in a disgusting puddle. The thoughts are coming again. Quickly prepare a dose to silence the voices. We watch as we carefully cook up a shot of heroin, heating the mixture, filtering the impurities with cotton, getting rid of any oxygen bubbles in the shot, and then tying the arm to find a vein, except our veins don't seem so normal anymore. As the shot enters your bloodstream, you immediately feel something ain't right. You try to scream, but only a faint gasp comes out of your cotton mouth. You've seen it happen before to other addicts, but the stuff always ends up coming first, leaving no room for anything. And now your veins, your blood, your nervous system too, meet the cursed Fent. You lie on your side surrounded by junk, respiratory depression they call it. Always know your dealer. These words echo in your mind while a primal instinct makes you realize that this is the last time you will close your eyes. My child. From a tangible hell you are about to descend into nauseating piles of infected flesh and burning plastic, where humanity, exactly like a cancer cell, turns against itself and expands. Help me burn away the carcinogenic tissue of this nightmare. Help me exact my vengeance on these little men of this infection. Find me and release me from these chemical bonds. We awaken in the blind alley, which our character notes is the same alley with the same junk we overdosed in. Except there's no more city around us. No sounds or lights or even noise. It's completely silent here. If that's not enough, something seems terribly wrong with the alley itself. It's more like a ruin, and what's left of it has veins, much like our own. And as the cherry on top, there's a corpse to our right, fusing into the wall. The game makes it pretty clear about what's going on through our character's head. I slept until the end of the world, you think as you get up, or I finally fried my brain. A searing pain in your stomach completely awakens your senses, bringing you back to your new reality. At a closer look, you notice a giant scar in the middle of your belly. As fear begins to rationalize itself in your mind, You remember the time you told a fellow syringe user that you would even sell a kidney to get off the stuff, all while preparing another dose. Either we're some Frankenstein's monster and there's a resurrection gizmo in my stomach, or we were out pretty hard not to feel this. In any case, with the cutscene over, I see this is a first-person game. I remember from the load screen blurb from earlier I can change the view from first to third person by holding down the guts button, but I don't quite know what that is. Let me check the controls real quick. That's one hell of a custom Xbox controller. But also, I find out the guts button is just renaming of the start button. Let's see what else we've got. D-pad lets us open a map and inventory, also lets us gesture. Okay, so I see this is the Dark Souls of drug games then. There's a crouch button, so maybe this game has a stealth system. Left trigger to aim, right to shoot. Actually, this is interesting. Left trigger also shoots left weapons. And then you have the secondary left and right buttons, which activate objects in our left and right hand, respectively. So, dual wielding seems to be a thing. Might be useful if we were flat out told we're leaving hell for a worse one. With that in mind, I start heading down the alley, inspecting the corpse for something to help us. I give him the follow Ed treatment, but he's got nothing. Just a little blurb from inspecting him. You could have sworn you heard him whisper something, but then again, what's a junkie's word worth? I don't like that, so we keep it pushing toward the shrine in front of the alley, which has something shimmering inside. It's a supply stash. We get our first weapon, the toxic mallet, which is a rebar club with a bunch of needles sticking out. Plus, it's got infinite durability on top of being upgradable. We also get 9 used syringes, a worn out suit, a Narcotics Anonymous sobriety badge, and Joshua's notebook. I choose to inspect it, and I get a pretty gnarly description. Holding it in your hand, you feel it throbbing with a life of its own. A strange fetus, apparently dead, is encased in the cover. After you look at the first few pages, it reveals itself to you as a completely normal notebook. With a quick glance, you notice that most of the pages have been violently torn out. Instead, the first page of what looks like a diary, a map fragment, and the final section of the notebook, filled with notes, scientific memos, and doodles, are still intact. Maybe Joshua will give us an idea what happened to the world. I choose to read his diary. 3 years. 3 fucking years without the needle, and here I am, in a shitty alley in the middle of nowhere, making a shot, just like the old days. I'm imagining the faces of the crocodiles down at the New Hope Center, their extreme disappointment if they could see me now in this state. 2 days after giving me the badge. The party, all those happy and hopeful smiles, the heated coffee, the thick cloud of cigarette smoke. They looked up to me. Even the new members looked at me with respect and admiration. No one imagined that I had already returned to shooting up a week earlier. I had then tried not to do it again in preparation for the big day. But the monkey on my back came right away, right on time. As if it had always waited patiently for me outside the doorway, never leaving, with a bloody, mocking, and triumphant smile. Loan shark money, tax collector, toxic lover. You cannot escape chemistry. If you think that a scientist like me can at least be a little more careful about chemical bonds, well, you're sorely mistaken. And here I am preparing another one. I'm about to go to work on a shitty chicken farm further down the road. The first job I found on the newspaper, the first one available. I've decided to give it all up. The city, my friends, the people from rehab. If I'm going to end my days as a junkie, I'll do it in the country. Maybe here I even have a glimpse of hope of getting sober again. The needle penetrates me like an immense sword 5 galaxies long. I can see the end of the needle piercing the stratosphere and settle gently into my vein. Mom, I miss you. To be honest, I'm kinda speechless here. I wanted something that just gave me info on what's happening, or maybe tips on how not to end up like this guy. And all I got was this brutal note about this poor man Josh relapsing. I also flipped to the notes section real quick, and it's a pretty descriptive breakdown on different drugs, including a step-by-step guide on safe injections. Maybe a bit useful for understanding drugs IRL and in-game, not the best info about what the hell is going on. But we do know now about a chicken farm, and given how this alley's in the countryside, maybe the farm is somewhat close. Maybe Joshua will be there and I'll get a companion. 2 junkies are stronger than 1. I head into the fog, holding the guts button to switch to third person mode. We look ready, but will we be? The first zone in the game is the countryside. And if it wasn't clear already, something is horribly, horribly wrong. There aren't only mutant farmers with horrific veins and needles popping out of them, but giant, fleshy, smiling beings in place of inanimate objects. Even some utility poles have people fused into them, sort of like the guy fused into the building earlier. I learned rather quickly the farmers are hostile here. I make the mistake of running up to someone trying to interact with them, but I almost get a pitchfork to the face. Luckily, the farmers are pretty slow and tend to just make threats when I'm a ways away instead of chasing me. Just to be safe, I try crouching and getting out of sight, and sure enough, I can sneak around them pretty easily too. In good old thief fashion, you can hear them talking when they can't see you. In this case, they're rather upset about someone taking their jobs. I'd be more upset for them if they didn't look like demonic clowns with needle spines. I also run into what I thought at first were normal chickens, but soon realized weren't. They too have these twisted, smiling faces with needles jutting out of their head. There's one encounter I can't even avoid, where a chicken approaches me, stares me in the eye, then screams, "You human beings will pay a devastating price." You might ask, well, what's the big deal? It's just a hellish abomination chicken. The issue is, just looking at these things gives my character a status effect called fear, which slowly drops my stamina bar. So I can't run as much anymore without finding drugs like cocaine or alcohol. Yes, drugs are gonna be quite the consumable in this game. And you can even mix them up to get mixed effects, like mixing heroin and cocaine to craft a speedball. That said, there are downsides to using drugs, because realistically there are downsides to using drugs. For example, with cocaine we just mentioned, there's a chance to overdose on it and suffer paranoia, which increases enemy presence in the levels. But even just abusing cocaine over and over again permanently decreases our HP, or life in the game. Obviously, I don't want to take drugs unless I really need to, probably to help in some tough encounters or boss fights, but there is one drug we'll absolutely have to take here. It's in the name of the game. We gotta have Fent. Our character suffers the curse of the Fent, an incurable addiction indicated by the Fent bar in the game HUD. It's this little meter with 2 ends, one for failure to take Fent and one for overdosing. Our job is to keep this red indicator from reaching either end. If we don't microdose on Fent, we'll eventually get withdrawals and die. But if we do take Fent, we've got to make sure we don't overdose, which also kills us. It's a balancing act that's not helped by the little blurb that some enemies deal Fent damage to us, so it's important to look at the Fent bar the same way we look at our life bar. Eventually, we get to the hen house, which smells terrible, like a mix of burnt plastic and animal feces blended together. And it's inside where we face something worse. The first boss, called the Breeder. It seems as though he recognizes us, and he's not happy to see us, using a shotgun that does way more damage than the regular farmers. I find it a bit weird he seems to know us, but I assume the guy's drugged out. It might also explain why he has no pants, or at least I want to assume that's the reason. Thankfully, he's pretty easy to cheese. I just duck and weave through the rows of chicken cages, and he goes down, giving me his weapon disgrace. I also get another map fragment and another diary page. It's only been 2 weeks since my arrival, and it is already hell here. Shooting up without getting caught by the Breeder was not easy. He kept an eye on me as much as possible. He didn't trust me. Sometimes he barged into my room like a cop, making up pathetic, implausible excuses. He mistook my drug-induced low responsiveness for some form of stupidity. He would re-explain each task to me 700 times, articulating each word slowly in that fucking country accent of his. It was unbearable, as was the stench of those wretched animals in cages. You don't forget a smell like that even after an electroshock. It felt as if a whole 6-course meal of sprouts and cheese had been crapped in my mouth. As if that wasn't enough. Last night I stopped by the chicken coop to get the lighter I had forgotten and caught the farmer in the act of having sex with a chicken. He looked at me and smiled. Humanity is a cancer. In any case, today is the last day. I know where he keeps some cash, that asshole. Tomorrow, using my day off as an excuse, I'm gonna tell him I'm gonna take a little trip into town. Of course, after I've nicked him some money, I'll take the first train and disappear forever. I have to find some dope. P.S. For the past few days, I felt my head pulsing as if there was something inside pushing to get out. Okay, well, I guess the breeder really was a breeder. Moving on from that though, that line saying humanity is a cancer kind of reminds me of the ghost lady in the intro saying humanity is like a cancer cell. She approached us in our overdose state, and when we came to, the journal was right by us. Maybe the two are connected somehow. And also, that ending seems pretty ominous. I don't know where the lore is going, but maybe this is some kind of airborne drug virus outbreak, if that makes any sense. Like, instead of open pores or fungal spores, you got needles growing out of your flesh. Heck, maybe we're immune somehow because we already were a drug addict. But then again, Joshua seems like he has something growing in his head, so I don't know. I guess we're gonna find out. But if the breeder was just the first boss, I'm honestly scared what awaits. Taking a page out of the diary page, I head toward the train station. On my way there though, for a couple seconds, a gust of wind splits the sky open where I see a face staring at me, smiling. But after all, who would believe a junkie? I make it to the Fent train. It's called the Fent train, no joke, and it too is a fleshy, toothy abomination. To get on, I inject a ticket into its main vein, causing the door to open, but also causing it to... well, the game spells it out. The Fent train thankfully stops doing that and also stops at the next station. But before I can even get a feel for my surroundings, I'm faced with two cops. A pretty cool thing about this game is the cops are all hostile unless you've chosen the easiest mode called cop mode, which makes you a former cop. So they bleed blue and don't attack you. The cops don't prove any challenge to us because, we're just him. We take them down really easily, yeah. Although it's important to note, there is something off with the cops more than the farmers. It's like these guys aren't in control of themselves, compared to the farmers who at least were stand-your-ground killers. The game sums it up best here. You feel like they have no free will of their own, almost as if something else is controlling them. Past them, we enter the next zone, which is a small town. More like a rest stop for those passing through its main road. It smells like burnt plastic from the henhouse, but worse. And yet, this place is one we vaguely remember. A feeling of melancholy nostalgia tries to bring you back to your past, but fails to. We also get some more mutants here. Half-beggars are these non-hostile NPCs waddling on useless legs asking for money and drugs, but they do cause the status effect, depression. It slowly lowers our damage and stamina up to 50%, and if we get too much of it, it can cause us to end ourselves. That's bad enough, but this freaking beggar can even steal from us. I caught one getting really close, and sure enough, after checking my inventory, realized the dude had taken my shotgun ammo. So he's not even half a beggar anymore, and I got my ammo back. Then there's Children of the Needle, who hunt in packs with needles and raise our paranoia. There's even an electric box enemy. So far, I've just been dealing with humanoids or humanoid animals, but now we have objects themselves trying to inject me. Heck, these guys can give me a status effect called Infection that slowly decreases my stamina and damage up to 50%. So, now that I got my ammo back... After clearing out some buildings and getting some loot, I make my way to the pharmacy, which may be a mistake. A Upon entering the pharmacy, you immediately feel a feeling of extreme heaviness in your chest. Your breathing slows down. Someone is watching you. It's creepy stuff, and it's not helped by the fact the store looks so dead and vacant. Our character even notes to themselves how, quote, whatever this world is, it seems on the verge of clinical death. Even inanimate matter seems alive, low tired and infected, corroded by some autoimmune disease. Seems to be in line with what I thought earlier about this being some kind of weird infection. We dive deeper into the pharmacy and find some loot, including one that looks familiar after the load screen. This is the Smart Syringe 1.0, complete with a living biofilter which filters impurities of our drugs, making them less harmful overall to us. It's also reusable, but it does degrade over time. Thankfully, we can repair it and upgrade it for better filtering effects in the future. So it's quite the catch early on here. Unfortunately, as we approach the warehouse outside the pharmacy, we run into the second boss of Final Fentanyl, the pharmacist. This dude doesn't take any time to recognize us. He's immediately on the attack. And a special quirk he's got, he's denying our health insurance. We straight up can't use healing items during combat. Not that it would help much if we could. He's just that fast, constantly laying down melee strikes and machine gun fire. The breeder had melee and ranged attacks too, but at least he was a bit more sluggish. This guy is something else. It takes me a couple tries and rage quits, but I finally take the pharmacist down. It's a good thing I saved right before at a bed where we save games at. Yeah. I loot his corpse and get that light machine gun of his, the Caniston, which is one hell of a name for this thing. We also find a bottle of fent citrate, which is alive somehow, a map fragment, and another diary entry from Josh. When I arrived in this small town, my head began to pulse more and more intensely. During my second night at the motel, after some crazy nightmare about a giant laughing tower and a strange angel, not even shooting heroin could make the pain go away. The next morning, I went to the pharmacy, hoping to find a good soul who would give me something powerful and specific for severe migraines. And of course, I only attract giant assholes. I'm confronted by this prickly pharmacist with German features, finicky like a mix between a Swiss officer and a Jewish banker. He of course won't give me anything without prescription. The pain makes me quite nervous. I want to crush his long brontosaurus neck and look into his eyes as he takes his last breath. Let's face it, he had figured out that I was a junkie. I didn't look good. With an extreme act of self-control, I composed myself, putting on a good face. Pitying him, I ask for a specific product that I'm sure you will never have, forcing him to look at the back. As the vile prick went to check it out, I bolted over the counter, stealing anything I thought might help me. But then, a strange drug caught my attention. In a series of non-commercial small flasks was a note that read, from Jensen Labs, 100 times stronger than common morphine. Study and send back. I decided to take them all, but my curiosity slowed me down and the pharmacist was already ranting to the cops about my crimes. And considering how small this town is, I knew it wouldn't take them long to get here. Running like mad, I took refuge under a bridge outside of town. 100 times stronger than morphine. So, Jensen Labs, huh? Looks like we've got an evil corporation experimenting with drugs. I'm almost sure we'll hear more about them later. One other note I have. I guess I should have been asking this earlier, but how exactly are these bosses getting Josh's diary notes? Also, it seems like he's been heading in a completely different direction than the one we started in. Yet his journal wound up right by us at the alley. Again, maybe that ghost and him are connected? Something definitely is weird here. I do make my way towards that bridge Joshua mentioned, but to get out of story recap mode for a second, something I'm noticing so far is just how lonely an experience Final Fentanyl is. Sure, there's non-hostile NPCs you can talk to, or even trade with, such as the wandering merchants, but these characters aren't really like spots of hope in the abyss. Interactions with them feel blatantly phony, where you play to their delusions for better prices or kinder words. It's a blatant transaction, and honestly, every encounter kind of feels like that, a transaction of sorts. Even hostile enemies, you're transacting your bullets into the bits of their bodies not filled with needles. Except at least I know the enemies just blatantly want me dead. Anytime I see anyone, I'll admit, it leaves me a little hollow feeling to know it's just a lost soul that wants something out of me. Nothing more. I do make it to the bridge, where I find my first base. Bases are safe areas across the game where I can store my equipment, cook food or drugs, and fast travel between other bases I find. Here at this base, there's a telephone I can use to call up dealers, another map fragment, and yet another note from Josh. Except I can't actually read this one quite yet. The game says I need to use the bed first. My character's just too wiped out after everything, and honestly, can't say I blame the dude after all he's seen. I get a little blurb as I decide to rest. You quickly fall asleep and put off reading the page until next morning. Morning? Can morning come to this place? You don't remember ever seeing sunlight until now. I shouldn't touch that shit. I shouldn't touch that shit. I shouldn't touch that shit. The exact moment the needle pierced my usual tortured hole and this strange new drug came in contact with my blood, my head started to go crazy. I could feel it swelling and grasping from within with heavy, deep breaths. My skull had become a pregnant, throbbing belly. I was now lying on the ground, immobilized by pain. The world above me was spinning at supersonic speed. I seemed to see the sun explode endlessly, while cycles of Dante's Inferno and ice ages alternated on Earth. I wanted to kill myself, but did not have the strength to do so. Then, all of a sudden, I felt my skull open. A placental fluid began to pour over my shoulders. The world stopped. Something began to crawl close to me. Hopeless, I could not turn and look. Then I heard it. I heard it come close to my ear and speak in the most horrendous, sick, terrible voice I could ever hear.
"See you soon, Joshua."
It whispered to me, before dragging itself away. Subsequently, darkness fell, along with a very strong smell of burnt plastic. I felt dirty inside, guilty. An ancient sense of prudishness had returned to visit me, like the first time I jerked off or shot up. The pain in my head was gone. Passing out, I dreamed of a beautiful woman with pitch black hair, helping me shoot up, gently caressing my head. Admittedly, it's a lot to process, and I don't really have time to do so. As I finish reading the page, the screen blurs and I fall to the floor. A hand begins to cover my face. Then, there's only darkness. We awaken inside the industrial zone, and here's where the game starts getting tough. Even the game makes it pretty clear, this place is the worst one yet. You would describe this place as a biblical hell mixed with the second industrial revolution. There's laughing and screaming and literally a dude fusing into the floor that looks kinda like the baby from Eraserhead. And I'm also being slowly poisoned all the while. The burnt plastic has reached such a peak, no matter where I go, I'm being hit with the infection and tumor status effects. Tumor is part of the cancer status, which, good news, doesn't cause any stat decreases, but bad news will instantly kill me if it fully fills up. Then there's the burnt plastic status effect. Okay guys, get a load of this one. It raises my fear, is incurable, and when it fully fills up, I'll instantly die and lose my game data. What were they thinking with this one? I mean, maybe it could work for something like an Ultra Nightmare mode, a hardest difficulty, but not a normal mode like I chose. I quickly figure out I'm gonna need some gear to get through this, and thankfully I do find enough parts to scrounge together an Oxy Biotank. This is a modification of our old oxygen tank mask that makes the increase of burnt plastic really not much of a problem. But now that I mention the mask, I realize I didn't mention it. We always had this from the get-go, even from that first cutscene. Heck, here I was thinking this drug nightmare was some new fresh hell for our main character. But I don't know, maybe there was some weirdness before everything went south. As we explore around, I learn a bit more about the lore, including what's up with there being flesh buildings or faces on a lot of things. These are biofetuses, beings which are the result of stem cell science and which can be used to create bioweapons or objects. It's pretty advanced stuff, if a little nightmare-inducing, and it actually does have an effect on our character. Anytime we use a biofetus to generate a bio-object or weapon, we gain a level of depression. Despite our player character being pro-abortion, which crazily enough is canon, that gets dropped on us as we learn about bio-babies making bioweapons. It's been a hot minute since I played Cruelty Squad, but I don't even think it went this far with its body horror. This is some wild stuff. We move on, past the likes of pipe stalkers and bags of flesh, making it to Jensen Laboratories, where the air is just so bad here, my burnt plastic meter is rising considerably once again. Worse yet, it's gonna be a key hunt. It's a good thing Doom prepped me for this. Something a bit different than Doom though is we're having to kill enemies who may have the cards on them, including the likes of the flamethrower cop, who increases our rage levels with its maniac laughter, which actually increases our stamina and damage by 25%, but does reduce our HP by 40%. I guess the idea is we're making ourselves more vulnerable to attacks, not caring to dodge anything, which kinda sucks because these guys are walking crabs with a flamethrower and grenades. They'll even try to take me out with a self-exploding attack when their health is low enough. Another, although thankfully weaker enemy is the scum scientists, who were responsible for making stronger Fent in the first place. But interestingly enough, check out this blurb. Like the cops, it seems to you that also these enemies have no free will, that they are manipulated by an insidious, concealed force. Paired with the cop description from earlier, I assume either someone or something is powerful enough to act as a hive mind of sorts, and I'm wondering how close we are to them, now that we're in the primary evil drug corpo building. Making my way past the locked doors, up the tower, I run into the third boss, Paul Jensen, the former head and founder of Jensen Laboratories, now twisted into a crab debris chimera. And just like the breeder, he's staring at us with recognition.
You? How dare you show up here again? Even younger than I remembered. It was him, wasn't it? Only he can do all this. You traitorous bastard! I'll tear you to pieces and fuck your corpse!
Paul is a bit of a challenge, with the typical long-range and short-range fighting style we've come to expect, but also a special attack that deals tremendous vent damage to us. We absolutely have to avoid those melee attacks, even if it means making us an open target to his painful rifle fire. On death, he doesn't drop a note from Joshua. I assume he hated the dude too much for that. And once again, it's weird we're being recognized as him. A younger version. I'm starting to wonder what our connection is. Are we a clone of him? Or something else? I see Paul has another item, a black key that we can use to enter the control room. Inside, we find a living head called the LARP generator head, used as a biobattery to power a generator. He cries to us.
Free me, please. My energy, my creativity. Used as a ribbon to decorate a wicked bomb.
Removing the head causes the generator to stop, and a new sound to start outside. I don't really want to know what we've done just yet, and instead, I read the 5th diary page we get, found taped onto the LARP head. I have no idea how long it has been since I last wrote. 10? 100? Maybe 1,000 years. Here, time seems to stand still. My memories are now a rambling, insipid slop. I am on the run again. After so long. After 100 whole lifetimes. I was working on God's behalf at Jensen Laboratories, together with a team made up of the best and most cynical scientists and chemists of the world. The official purpose of the project was to synthesize increasingly efficient synthetic opioids. to contribute to the pharmaceutical advancement of mankind. Our real intent, however, was something else entirely: to anesthetize the whole world while God slowly took control of it. We were good. More than good. We were brilliant. We started gradually, injecting Fent into your food, then into your beverages, into your ibuprofen, drugs, into your water supply, then into your patches, into your products on offer, always on the verge of expiration. Later, we found ways to inject it into your commercials, into the news, into your insurance policies, into the pop hits of the moment, into your spiritual guides, into new age crap, into your relationships, into sex, into porn, into your dicks and cunts. We injected it into your sense of perpetual hurry, and your fear of death, because there is always time. But everything is also constantly expiring, and you, a tiny individual, have the perpetual feeling that wherever you are missing out on something extremely important, which is happening now, in another place, a place where you are not. You are just a bunch of poor rats. I have no remorse. By the time the project neared its end, God was everywhere. Everything had gone according to plan, more or less. As our successes progressed, I fell in love. Even at the highest point of the chemistry symposium, I could not escape it. Eva, a colleague and a beautiful woman with long, silky hair, pitch black as her eyes, so that the iris was impossible to distinguish from the pupil. I loved her as I had loved only dope. Perhaps I loved her even more. I introduced her to heroin, to drugs, to the most exquisite pleasures our position could offer us. We spent whole days shooting up, then fucking, then shooting up again. Everything was perfect, like never before. I felt like a god too. Until, by chance, like every unpleasant thing that happens because of a strange and sinister slip of fate, I caught her getting screwed by the lab director Paul directly on his sumptuous mahogany desk. In that moment, my heart exploded into 1,000 pieces, and every trace of humanity left in me vanished forever. After a week of shooting up and crying, I went to see God, who was growing more and more in the underground of our psyche. I went to him and asked him for a favor, crying toxic tears of hatred. After all, he owed it to me. I had been the one to give birth to him, to give him life. I asked him to kill them all, except for Paul and Eva. I had a special treatment in mind for them. His eyes lit up at my requests. God looked at me like a proud father looks at his grown-up son. In the meantime, I took a shortcut to the basement of the building. A trapdoor was waiting for me. I escaped to it without too many complications. As I slowly descended the steps of a ladder that led me to the most infamous moment of my existence, I heard their screams and curses. I also heard Eva's sobs as they carried her away. For a moment, I hesitated, but it was only for a moment. Now the reign of God will totally descend on this cursed earth. So that's why the world is the way it is. A nihilistic drug addict who hated humanity, worked for an evil drug corporation, got cucked, then decided to end the world with help from the god being he birthed out of his head. Yeah, that is rough to go through, I won't lie. But I'm not all that sorry for the dude who helped poison us all and said we were poor rats. Joshua just sounds like a scum scientist. And about this Eva character, I'm almost convinced it's just the dark-haired girl from the intro. I did spot the humanity is a cancer dialogue similarity between her and Josh earlier, and we've been over how we keep getting recognized, even seen as a younger version of presumably Josh by his mutated lab director Paul. I think we might be Josh's kid with Eva. That actually explained why the ghost called us my child. She was being literal. We find the trapdoor mentioned in the note, ascending down and down into a frigid darkness, smelling of mold and rot. It takes 20 full minutes to get to the bottom, and when we do, we collapse and pass out.
You are close. Closer and closer. I knew you would make it. I'll guide you through this maze. Be nice. Open yourself to me. Together, we will pierce this nightmare. Together, we will be the cure for this autoimmune disease. I've waited for you for so long. I want you. I crave you.
This is not gonna end well. We enter the sewers, a labyrinth of pipes and enemies constantly infecting us if we don't have at least a FFP3 mask equipped. It truly is a maze here. But fortunately, or unfortunately, Eva is guiding us to her, appearing as a ghostly fire that leads us through the map. Anytime I ignore the flame, she shrieks, which can attract more enemies. I guess she's really craving us. Guys, I don't like this. Enemies that are down here include the likes of the pipeline jackal, another enemy I have to censor somewhat. They've got the maniacal laugh of the flamethrower cop, which angers us, as well as a meth blade that gives us the equivalent of a meth dose. These guys are really fast and tend to dose us right away, which eventually gives me just about the grossest mental status effect in the game, skin crawler bugs. Caused by meth addiction, I constantly lose minus 15 HP every 10 seconds. This sucks. I'm literally bugging out here. Eva doesn't help with that addiction, but she does lead me to the containment chamber where I find her skeletal remains and spirit, which penetrates me. Jeez. On the plus side, now we have access to Martyr Mode, a power-up fueled by the hatred of Eva, or Eve as she's referred to here. I mean, the Adam and Eve symbolism is there, I suppose. God, the temptation of the forbidden Fent. The cool thing is, not only does it empower us, it allows us to fly around the map and access places we weren't able to before. The only drawback being this is a limited power that will take time to recharge. And in the meantime, our stamina is halved. When I do recharge, I go to the drainage channel above the containment chamber, where I eventually find Joshua's laboratory. I find him, Joshua the architect, holding a note completely covered in blood. He's older but does look like my character. Has an earring, has that crazy hair that juts out, except he's only got a few gray strands. He seems like he was our father, and he's gone now. I pick up the bloody note, which turns out is his final diary page. I feel you getting closer. I can feel you in the air. She guided you, as a physical body to carry out her revenge. Do I need to remind you that some time ago, she and I were working together to poison the world? By now, you will have noticed the result of her mistakes, navigating this cancerous corpse. No, after all, it's not like you have much choice. I won't give her that satisfaction. I'm leaving like a coward, just as I've lived my life. If my soul exists, I lost it long ago. Are you disappointed? Were you hoping for a tender father-son moment? God was just the word dog spelled backwards. I became everything I hated most so long ago. Remember this word, hate, for as long as you can. What a guy. Even though Joshua is confirmed to be our father here, I mean, the dude is complete scum. I was almost expecting some sort of last-second regret or gift to help us out, except no. Apparently, Josh was just a coward who destroyed everything, creating the very being that hovers over the final zone. It's like hell here. A ruined cityscape burned away as though a nuke went off. Bodies are melted into the ground and debris. Even our throat is burnt just by breathing in the air. I duck in and out between cover. I have to, or else God watches me and laughs. Whenever this happens, I immediately become paralyzed for a few moments and gain fear. Only in cover, escaping his gaze, do I lose it. Some of the deadliest enemies can be found here, such as the riot cops, with their high health and minigun fire or flamethrowers. Suicide tanks charge toward me and deal massive explosive damage, and mold snipers who blend into the ruins, fire ketamine-infused bullets my way. By some miracle, and a little help from Ma, I make it to the Fent Tower where God reigns up above. There's no doors or windows. I have to fly up to get into this thing, fighting my way through until I meet him. Not God, but the fourth boss, the Burned Martyr. This was the mutant on the front book cover, or rather, an angel. He was the reason we wound up in the industrial zone, the guy behind the hand that dragged us there. Apparently, throwing you into the industrial zone wasn't enough to stop you. It doesn't matter. I'll kill you with my own hands. I see that Mom turned you into someone like myself. You know, she never liked me. How can I blame her? After all, she never wanted me. This thing is our brother. Now that I think about it, we were both born after the cheating incident with Eva being dragged off against her will, so it's looking pretty foul how we were both conceived. After he stops talking, it's an almost instant fight from there. And the Burned Martyr is no joke. Bro's got 1 billion health. I've been trying to keep some drugs on hand for a fight like this one, but it's not going to be enough. We absolutely need Martyr mode here. Any attack without it won't even do damage to the guy, unless we have the LARP rifle, which I may have been building all this time. You get the parts needed to make it from boss drops to items across the maps. It's a plasma rifle that deals more damage than any other weapon in the game, complete with a living head staring into my soul. It's awesome, and I'm really glad I have it because the Burned Martyr is the hardest encounter in Final Fentanyl. Nothing else compares. If we're even tapped by his winged attack, on top of getting the regular damage he does, which is a lot, I also get damage from any random substance I've previously encountered, plus instantly getting the corresponding state associated with that substance abuse. I die time and time and time and time again. It's like the V2 boss from Ultra Kill, except on steroids and with combat happening in all possible directions. Me flying and weaving and leading shots, praying I can kill this dude before my martyr mode runs out and I get annihilated by my evil angel brother with drug wings while we're next to God. I didn't think I'd be here exactly when I first started out, but it's one hell of a finale. Finally, I kill the guy, and he initiates a warm farewell where he blows himself up and me with him. So it takes me more tries, but I finally kill him and watch the explosion from a good distance away. Now, somehow, I'm gonna face off against...
Killing my son won't get rid of me. I am a concept so deeply rooted in you, in all of you, that I cannot be eradicated. I am going to seek mine give birth to it, an environment filled with loneliness, poisoned by a chemical and nihilistic hatred. I am the total absence of love. The good aim of rebelling against the immune system, leading it to a slow death, like cancer. Isn't that curious? The disease has outlived its host. Unless the real host body is you. Join me. I will make you the most powerful being in this burnt-out universe. You will become immortal. Do you know what that means? No consequences for your actions or injections.
This is God, our brother and stepfather. While Joshua is our father, God is the father of our brother, the Burned Martyr. Another pretty grim detail, while the book doesn't spell it out, Eva wasn't said to be pregnant with us before God made his deal with Joshua and she was seized. So it seems me and the Burned Martyr were children born from assault from 2 different fathers. That would make Joshua even more scum than he already was, but the dude was already dead when we found him, having killed himself rather than face us. Here, we're facing the thing that assaulted our mom, and it's happy, laughing at us. The eater of this world, the twisted, smiling mass that's corrupted and poisoned every life under it. And now he's asking us to join him. I can't. Not because of my hatred towards him, but because a cutscene begins to play. You don't even have time to ponder that tempting offer for a moment before searing pain strikes you in the stomach. A gap opens in your belly, revealing not only guts and blood, but also wires, fuses, and a screaming nuclear device. The mouth laughs heartily, a loud, ringing laugh, and the tone of voice sounds just like Eva's. It is often said that we always have a choice, whatever situation we find ourselves in. However, it is less often pointed out that the consequences of a decision can have long-lasting effects, or that someone else can influence us to such an extent that they change the course of events. No one likes to think about those times when the privilege of choice does not exist, did not exist, and never will exist. Because thinking about this means that the world is unjust and totally governed by chance. We've got no choice here. Maybe I'll save that for another video. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was Final Fentanyl. This was one hell of a survival horror game. I don't even know if I could even play it on anything but cop mode. Ah, shoot, okay. I'll admit, I did play the game on the easiest difficulty. I'm sorry guys, I'm just not a real fake gamer. But seriously, we're gonna drop the playthrough and go for a second here. Clearly, this isn't a real game. It's an art book made by Carlos Giovanni, I hope I didn't butcher that, aka Fat Gomez, an Italian artist whose style is pretty consistent with what's found in Final Fentanyl. A lot of his work is simultaneously bright, ugly, cartoonish, and real. Simply put, it's striking stuff that I like quite a bit. And for Final Fentanyl, it lends itself to a world that does truly feel like hell. Almost everything seems wrong or gross. Buildings have faces and are alive, even high. Which should be silly, except how they look. Just get a look at these things. Equally exaggerated, but real. Some of this stuff kind of reminds me of the background art in Ralph Bakshi's Cool World. Not the game, that is. It was a PG-13 live-action animated movie, like an edgier Who Framed Roger Rabbit, whose toon world was this literal living hell of demented screaming skyscrapers. It's truly inspired stuff, and I do mean it as a compliment that Carlos' work reminds me of it. Also, kind of a funny coincidence here, the original idea for Cool World before studio interference was to make a horror story about a mixed-race human/toon child essentially going mad and tracking down their father as revenge for being abandoned. Just a weird parallel I noticed, especially with regards to a troubled child searching for their father angle, which, to be fair, is way more complicated in Final Fentanyl, where we were a child of assault, unknowingly used as a dirty bomb by our hateful ghost mom, to follow our father's footsteps and kill our stepfather/brother who caused the drug zombie apocalypse. That's a lot to grapple with. I'll touch on the story in just a moment along with my interpretations, but I do give it to Carlo that the gameplay for a game that's non-existent is so vivid here. With some of these art book fake game projects, they do kind of obscure how the gameplay is, where you're not fully sure what genre it is or what perspective you're playing in. That's not the case here. This is very clearly a first-person survival horror experience letting you switch to third person, and the descriptions do such a terrific job penetrating you. You can genuinely almost picture how it'd look and play, which is really cool. Now, on to discussing the story. I'll say this right off the bat, I've never played any of the Final Fantasy titles, so if there are any allusions to plot points, it definitely went over my needle-pierced head. I am willing to go full Philip K. Dick here, seeing the Scanner Darkly reference. Looking back, I definitely think Cop Mode was a callback to how the main character in A Scanner Darkly was both a narcotics agent and a drug addict. Except there's a bit more to this and the obvious drug references. Final Fentanyl seems to really enjoy messing around with the idea of reality, self, identity, much like Dick does. Funnily enough, I just got done reading Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep around the time of recording this video, which is quite the read. In a good way, that is. But here's a strong example of a story playing around with perception and what we can trust, especially when, spoiler alert, Deckard gets apprehended and we get the feeling of just how easy it would be for everything we know about him to be a lie, for this identity we've been following to be a falsehood. It's not the case, but for a brief bit, it feels like a possibility. Then things get really trippy at the end when Deckard assumes he's a different person, a religious figure known as Mercer, but this is ultimately a falsehood. It's a comfort he gives himself in a bleak, miserable existence that has no escape. Along with him thinking he's found an actual toad out in the wasteland, an animal thought to be extinct, which would be an actual miracle, except it's revealed just to be an android replica. Likewise, Final Fentanyl is also similarly surreal and raises questions of identity. Who we are isn't immediately clear, and perhaps the answers we do get aren't meant to be entirely trusted. We couldn't trust our mom who led us to our death, but maybe we shouldn't trust the main character as a reliable narrator. We shouldn't believe that everything that's happening is literal. Before I get ahead of myself here, let's go over the plot real quick. Joshua, the architect of the apocalypse, was once a bitter drug addict who had a being known as God living in his head. How God came about exactly, I don't know. I don't think it's a divine being. I think it's some kind of mutation that lived inside of Joshua's brain, giving him prophetic dreams and such, like the Laughing Tower of God, his future love, his stepson, ideas that it wants to accomplish. My hunch is, with things seeming pretty dystopian without the addict zombies beforehand, maybe some kind of environmental poison resulted in God. Think Total Recall level mutation here. I don't even necessarily think Jensen Labs was experimenting to make a god until Joshua got involved somehow. But I do think they were trying to make a potent kind of drug, which evidently was powerful enough to release the mutant. It was able to free itself, and like some kind of parasite, latched itself to that company that gave it life. From there, God worked to seize control of the world, making addicts out of everyone, with Josh helping his creation. He fell in love with Eva, got cheated on by lab director Paul, and turned to God for revenge. On the surface, it seems like it listened, but I'm not fully sure. Keep in mind that he wanted everybody to die in the world except for Eva and Paul, but God doesn't grant that. Joshua and God would go on to assault Eva. God's child was the burned martyr, while Joshua's child was us, the player character. I suppose we live out some kind of life for a while, maybe even as a cop, until we spiral into addiction and things eventually hit the hay. We get saved by our mom, awakening in a wasteland and following the diary pages of our father she had planted for us, but unknowingly being used the entire time as a living dirty bomb. We're manipulated by a vengeful ghost who didn't want to give birth to us to kill both our brothers and us. That's the most basic summary I can think of, although there are some other things, like if you turn the page after the end, you see this little biofetus. Is that a remnant of God? Is that from the book journal? Even though the fetus appeared dead? I don't know. How does the timeline work exactly? Like, what's our connection to certain places, and how didn't we know about our connection to Jensen Labs? It leads me to this gut feeling I have that there's more to the surface here. I don't think things are meant to be fully taken as literally as possible. In fact, some things are kind of straight up really weird. You could call it mistakes or oversights, like Eva becoming Eve for a second. Is that intentional or a typo? Also, consider how we have that weird melancholy for the small town, like we just about remember it but can't. Little moments like that, or how we flat out overdose and then come to in an alley that looks like the alley we were in, but is actually outside the city. Then we find out there's this grand God-creating conspiracy involving our whole family. It's so out there, I think you could honestly say the whole story is a dying dream and you wouldn't be booed for it. See Final Fantasy, Final Fentanyl, your final dream after overdosing? When we unplug the LARP machine, it's towards the end of the game. There's no choice to not die because we can't choose anything else anymore. It's like we unplugged power to our brain, or the life support system we were on was unplugged. And now our organs are shutting down. The dream is ending. We can't LARP or imagine a fantasy of ourselves living out this crazy life for much longer. We can't. We're doomed to die. But also, it doesn't just have to be the Taxi Driver ending interpretation. You could think the whole story is all a giant trip, or maybe a delusion the main character's having. Consider how the dude's dad is responsible for the destruction of this entire world in making a fent being called God. Your father gave birth to God. And then you basically become a battle angel who is more powerful than them. It's like the main character has this almost exaggerated divine importance. But if we consider this is the point of view of a mentally ill addict, then it seems a lot less literal and a lot more like religious delusion or religious psychosis. Heck, I do know somebody that suffered this because of a reaction to a medical prescription. Thankfully, they're fine now, but just imagine somebody who doesn't have a support system, left to their own delusions. It's scary stuff. And I can definitely see it being possible this game is the perspective of somebody losing it. A different interpretation I had is the story could be an allegory for some of the self-hatred or feelings of inescapable fate one may have as a drug addict, coming from a drug-addicted family. The main character's father was a junkie who we were doomed to look like and genetically disposed to become like without a choice. Then our brother and stepfather God is a destructive being that's poisoning the world around them. Even our mother isn't spared. She seems loving and helping, but things get ugly really quick, and she's secretly manipulating us. And all along, we're just an actual ticking time bomb without true choice or purpose. It's a pretty nihilistic story, even without that reading. Although I do wonder if it was intended. Kind of like how some people have the reading that a movie like Hereditary is a big allegory for hereditary mental illness and the feeling of inescapable doom that may come about for its sufferers. Perhaps Final Fentanyl is a metaphor for one being born to an addict, becoming an addict and hating themselves and their family for potentially giving them a bad, destructive life without a chance to have anything better. One final note I have is how seemingly the ending is foreshadowed from the get-go. On the front cover itself, the burned martyr appears with a giant nuclear explosion being reflected in its eye, which A, proves there really was no hope for us and no choice, and B, seems like it's all a big hell loop. Nah, I'm just kidding about that last bit, but as you can probably see, there's a lot to be read into the story. I'd be interested to know what you guys think. I'm sure there's stuff I missed or could be interpreted a whole different way. A link to Final Fentanyl and Carlo's Instagram is included below, and I do recommend you check it all out. Just don't do drugs IRL.
This is your brain. This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs.